everyone, and welcome to our, I think it's our fourth session about life cycle events, and I think we're going to have two sessions about marriage, okay? There's a lot of stuff going on in Jewish marriage, and so first of all, can you all see the screen?
Yeah.
Good. So getting married, of course, is something universal. It's not something that's invented by Judaism. There are different ways that marriage was done in antiquity. But let's not forget that in antiquity, they also had other ways of being together, which is concubines, right? And also more than one marriages. So we'll talk about that and where the Judaism fits with that. But in life cycle events, okay, the next thing you do right after your bar bat mitzvah, hopefully not before, and hopefully you make it to get married. Marriage is a mitzvah, okay? It's a commandment. It's something you are supposed to do as a Jew, and it's the Rambam, the Maimonides say it's actually a positive commandment that a man, okay, ought to be married. Now, it's a good question. It's like, is a woman ought to be married? Well, of course, because men and women are the ones that are supposed to be married to each other, but it's mainly the men that are encouraged or are obligated to be married. And there's like a very famous story of this rabbi, whose name was Ben Azai, okay? And he was Rabbi Ben Azai, and he never got married. And when he was like 18 and people started to get worried, because back then you got married when you were 13, 14, 15, okay? So they tried to find him other women, and he said, no, I'm not interested. And when he reached the very late age of being 24 or 22, I don't remember exactly, they like gave up and said, what's going on, Ben Azai? You have to get married. And he says, Nafshi b'Torah chashka. My soul is sort of like lusts for the Torah. Okay, Torah is what I'm married to in that sense. And the rabbis told him, but you are going against the commandment of procreation, of reproduction, and they took away the title rabbi for him. So he became just Ben Azai. So this is to show us how important it is for men to get married, and that they, even if they, he said, if I get married and have a wife and children, that will distract me from studying Torah. I want to just study Torah 24/7, as they say. And the rabbi said, no, you still have, you have to get married and build a family, etc. So that's why it's so. That's why we know it's such an important commandment. And then there's a very famous verse that when God creates man in the creation of the world, on the sixth day of creation, he creates man, Adam, and man, Adam, gives names to all the animals, and he becomes their friends. He becomes their friend, and but he's lonely, and God sees that he's lonely, and he says, "Lo tov heyot adam levado." It is not good for man to be alone, and that's when he decides to create the woman and bring her into the world. So that's another perspective on that.
I thought when God created Adam, it was both male and female.
You're talking about version 2 of the story. Version 1 of the story. Yeah, there's version 1 and version
Okay.
2. In version 1, he creates both of them together.
Okay,
Okay, and in version 2 of the story, he creates woman from the rib.
so in one version, I thought they created man first and then the heavens and the earth, and it was the other way
No,
around.
yeah. In version 1, he creates both of them together.
Larry, are you saying that the version 3?
No, I know.
There's no sequel in that regard.
Isn't it interesting that all through the ages, Jews been encouraged to marry, and if you had a scholar, that his price was more.
Yeah,
The richest man would look for a scholar to marry. So so what that was, it was the best genes went forward.
yeah, that
But
is
the
very
Catholics,
interesting.
On the other hand, took their smartest people out of the gene.
Yeah, they didn't continue their
If
lineage.
you had a bright kid, he went to the priesthood.
Right. That's fascinating. And that a lot of people say that the Jewish smarts and all the Nobel Prize winning and all that, seeking learning and education as being like first priority for Jews, that comes really from that ethos. You could just and you're right. And on the other hand, the Catholic took the brightest and they told them you can't get married and you can't have a family. So that's sort of like counterproductive to getting the society advanced.
But it's also a way of maintaining control over people. If you have the smartest and brightest being the leaders and the other people not very smart and bright, then it's easier for those leaders to
Yeah,
control them. I don't know.
it's
I'm
true,
sure
but
that wasn't.
but it's a big
into it,
sacrifice not to have.
But I thought in the beginning priests could get married and then down the road they changed the rule.
You mean in Judaism?
No, in Catholicism.
Yeah, they might have changed that down the road. I think they changed it when one of the fathers of the church in the 4th or 5th century said that sexual gratification and any sexual interaction is a sin. And that's when they said, okay, we'll leave it to the common people, but we will refrain, the holy people, the priests will refrain from that. So later on, it also says in the book of Genesis, על כן יעזוב איש את אביו ואמו ולבט באשתו והיו לבשר אחד, meaning, and therefore, man is going to leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife, and they will become one flesh. Okay, so that ideal of leaving your family, your original family, and going and building a new family is something that's also described in the Bible, right at the beginning of the Bible, as a big value. Marriage is also the proper way to reproduction, okay? And that's why when there is marriage, so the offsprings get precedence in terms of inheritance, than kids that come from a not a sanctified marriage. Okay, so we notice that throughout history, if you are a son of legal marriage, so you inherit, and if you're a son of a non-legal interaction, like a concubine, or something even worse, okay, if there's adultery or something like that, you don't inherit, or you inherit much less in that regard. So the encouragement is not to reproduce without marriage. That's a basic rule in Judaism. I think it's like all over, right, the societies of the world, and obviously it's changed in this century. Started already changing in the 20th century. But I think still that's the predominant value or leading, paradigm to reproduction is that you do it through marriage. And definitely in Judaism, that's what's expected to be doing. I won't talk a lot about, why people get married because, there's psychologists that could do that. But in Judaism, it really stresses the having a companionship, someone to grow with, which is, very obvious. Love, okay, that you're able to transform your love to others. Oh, hi, there are seats over there. And you're right on time. We're talking about marriage. Yeah, well.
Well, at this point, I'm not available.
Okay. And obviously, it's also a way for sexual gratification, okay? Because, human beings have their urges, and society is trying to make sure that these urges and desires and wanting gratification are sort of like done in a moral way and within a proper structure. And that's why, another reason why you have that framework of marriage. Again, not to say that there are not other ways, but they are considered by Judaism as lesser value. Okay.
But wasn't the emphasis on the negative side was adultery? Relationships outside of that, where there were no married people involved, was not viewed just quite the same way.
But it's not the preferred way.
Right.
Okay. If two people that are not married are have a sexual relationship, that is not considered a proper relationship, but it's not banned. It's not against halacha like it is if it's with married people, adultery. Okay. Or again, there's a concubine that a man could take a woman that's in earlier days. Okay, then there's really the issue of the ideal of marrying one woman, and here again, this is not egalitarian in that sense, but although in the Torah you are allowed to take more than one woman as your wife, that is not encouraged in the sense that even the Torah recognizes that there is one woman, or even in the case of Jacob and Rachel, Leah, and Bilhah and Zilpah, which are the two concubines. There is a favorite one, right? Which is Rachel, and even then it wasn't. Even then he was only supposed to marry one. Okay, just because he was deceived, so he married another one, and it is definitely an exception. In most cases, there is one wife, or in the case of David, that had, I think, 18 wives. That did not end up well. Okay, and in the case of Solomon, that had 1,000 wives and ended up very bad. Right, he was thrown off his kingdom. The temple was destroyed. And the Bible even says, okay, these women have distracted him off the right path. But
Are you saying women are the path to destruction?
only if you have 1,000 women.
Oh.
Yeah. If you have 900, that's okay.
I wouldn't even recognize it.
But in that sense, it is true that up until the 10th century,
It was like
Okay.
1099 or something.
yeah,
like that?
1099. No, it was before. Yeah, it was like around it's like around the year 1000. Okay, all throughout Judaism, you were allowed to marry more than one woman, but in I think it was in Germany, in the city of Mainz, Rabbeinu Gershom put out a ban and said that from now on, Jews cannot marry more than one woman. Okay, and that really worked, and people stopped marrying in the Ashkenazi world. In the Sephardi world, in some places they continued. In Yemen, they continued until the 20th century, even until they got to Israel, and it was banned. In Israel, polygamy is banned. But even then, even in countries of Islam, where Jews lived and they were allowed to marry more than one woman, they were not allowed to do that unless they could provide for and love properly the second wife.
Didn't the hostage that was a Bedouin, he had 2 wives.
Mhm.
So how is that possible?
They're not supposed to do that. Yeah, they have one wife which is registered and the others are not.
Is that
The Bedouins, the Bedouins, not the Druze. The Druze have only, I think, only have one
No,
wife.
I remember Rabbi Gershon's edict was for like 1,000 years. And I remember it,
Oh, will it be
1,000
renewed?
was up, I forgot how many years ago now. I was
Oh.
always wondering what was gonna happen when that
Oh, yeah,
1,000
right.
year was up.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think they'll be continued.
It was, I just don't know what all the reasoning
yeah.
was behind it.
There are 2 other aspects to marriage that we need to mention briefly. One is called ibum, which is I don't know how to pronounce it. It's in Latin, levirate.
Yeah,
Levirate marriage. Okay, do you know what levirate marriage is? It's a situation where there is 2 brothers, okay, and one of them is, I mean, it could be that both of them are married, but let's say one of them is married and he passes away and he does not have children. Okay, his brother is obligated to levirate the woman, his sister-in-law, okay, and marry her, okay, and have an offspring for his brother. So his brother's lineage is not sort of like distinct in the world. So it creates an absurd situation where a woman that was banned to this brother before, because if he would have slept with her while his brother was alive, that would be adultery, and they would both be punished with the death sentence. Okay, now suddenly she is not only permitted for him to be married, he has to take her, and they don't get married. They have a ceremony that is a levirate marriage, and then that's how, and that she's obligated to do that. That's in the Torah, okay, and that law is still in effect till today. We don't see it happen. Why don't we see it happen? We don't see it happen because of the next point here, which is chalitza, okay, which is the release of someone from the ibum, okay. So chalitza, which means releasing someone, okay. It's like when you have like a cork on the wine, and you release the you cork the wine, so that's lachlotz, that's to remove. So that's releasing from ibum. Is a ceremony that's also in the Bible, and it's when the brother comes and says, "I don't want to do this. I don't want to take my brother's wife, widow," and he comes before court, and there's a ceremony where she releases him from that obligation in front of the court. And we actually, the book of Ruth, we see that happening. There's actually evidence that it happened. And what is done today is that ceremony of chalitza, of releasing from the levirate marriage. So that's why we don't see levirate marriage happening.
Does she have to release him? Does she release her brother-in-law?
Yeah,
It's
in
up to
front of the
her?
court. Yeah,
It's up to-
he comes and he says, "I do not wish to do this." Okay, And the court says something like, okay, we understand, and they add something which sounds like shame on you, okay, that you're not doing this. And then she releases him. There's a whole ceremony that she does.
Does she have to? Does she have to?
Yeah, she
release
has
it?
to. Oh,
Because what she's giving up.
Yeah.
She's giving up, the applicant, maybe financially, this is a disaster for her.
yeah, so she would have to agree to that as well. She does not have to do it. Yeah,
So if the other brother is already married and not single, he takes on a second wife?
yeah, exactly.
Well, the other interesting thing is, I mean, back then. What if they didn't know why they might not have had children? So either maybe the man couldn't have it or the woman couldn't have it. So even if you had a levirate marriage, didn't necessarily produce children.
Well, but you're supposed to try, you know,
Aim.
that's the aim.
Rabbi,
Yeah,
is that true? The woman is, or the man, but the woman is beyond childbirth?
no, then,
So it's only for the purpose of having a child.
yeah, that's the purpose.
And if she can't conceive, do they keep trying for 10 years?
Yeah, I think they still try, yeah, for 10
It
years,
depends how cute she is.
yeah. Okay.
This is a problem.
Okay, so-
Rabbi, does that apply? I'm sorry, Rabbi, does that apply if there is only a girl child with the brother that passed, or if it does apply with a boy as well who would carry the name?
Question. Good question.
I don't remember. I think it's also with a girl,
So we have-
but I'm not sure.
Well, we have in the Torah there where the two daughters, I
Yeah.
think it was, of the uncle went to Moses. And
For
they
the
were,
property.
Oh, no, yeah,
is
yeah,
that a different?
yeah, no, that's something different, yeah.
Rabbi, does he obligate to marry her even if she's 50 or something? I mean,
Live that long then.
First of all, they really did not live that
Yeah,
long
no.
back then.
um,
If there's still a chance of having children, so yes, they try. Okay, so I want to talk about prohibited marriages. Okay, so there are different categories. One, marrying family. Okay, marrying, like sister-in-law, or marrying your own sister, or anything of that sort. Okay, these are prohibitions that we could say, of course, but the Torah says these are prohibitions, that you're not allowed to marry them, you're not allowed to have also sexual relationships with these family members. And it's not just blood related, it's like, as we said, it's like also, other relationships that come through other marriages. The next category is a Kohen, a priest. Okay, from the we have in Judaism three classes in a way, right? We have the priests, the Kohanim, we have the Levites, the Leviim, and we have the Israel, which is sort of like the commoners, okay, which is like the rest of the people. I'm a Levite, so I'm a little bit elevated than everyone else here. Unless you're a Cohen, right? So you're on top of me as well. You take all the gifts that come to the temple.
So which grandparents does that come from? One grandfather said I was a Levite, and the other said I was a.
From the father. It comes from the father's side.
Paternal side.
Yeah, the paternal side. Yeah.
Doesn't the daughter of a Kohen also carry the Kohen?
Yeah, she carries it, but if she marries an Israelite, she doesn't pass it on.
Oh,
Okay. So a Cohen, a priest cannot marry a divorced woman or a convert woman, okay, which is very interesting. And that is sort of like the reasoning behind that is because the Kohanim are sort of like a pure breed in a sense, and they are supposed to be working in the temple and not have any mixture of like non-Jewish
distractions.
blood or distractions. So in that way, if there's a convert, okay, and they would marry a Kohen, so that would like mix that in a way that's not proper, okay. That's probably maybe the only place that the Torah, as I mentioned last week when we talked about conversion, Judaism is not a racist religion because the proof is you can convert. Okay, so if you can convert and you can change your religion into being Jewish, then it's not racist. It's not just blood related. But with the position of the Kohanim, there is that issue. It's not racism. It's preserving that purity. Okay, in that sense, and one can argue with that if it's fair or not. But that's sort of like the thinking behind it.
Are the Cohens and the Kohanim all carrying the last name of Cohen, no matter how it's spelled?
No. There are a lot of people that have a last name of Kagan, and they're not priests. So one needs to check carefully. And there are others like, Segel, or a lot of times they're Kohanim. Siegel.
Legal are Kohanim.
Sometimes, not always, yeah.
I mean, my sister married a Kohen.
Katz is
Her
Cohen.
children, I don't think, one of her boys, I don't even think knew he was a Kohen. They went to
Yeah.
religious.
So it doesn't have to be in that way. And also a divorced woman is very interesting in that sense, is that we want, again, I don't fully understand the logic, but we want someone who's a virgin for a Cohen, okay? That's sort of like the thinking that the Torah wants, the Cohen to be with a woman for the first time. And there's very interesting because I wrote like the conservative movement approach on a bunch of topics here. The conservative movement really has ruled that these norms are no longer applicable. Okay, so in the conservative movement, if a Cohen wants to marry a divorced woman or a convert, a woman, they may do so. I'm saying a woman because these rules don't apply on a woman who was like a bat Kohen, okay? And the rationale behind that is that, first of all, the work at the temple is no longer necessary because there's no temple, okay? So we don't need the priest to do that. And then there's some rabbis, they say, okay, so if they're not needed, what happens when the temple will be rebuilt? Okay, so the thing is that you have to explain to this Cohen, you're going to marry this convert or this divorced woman, but you will be uneligible to work in the temple when it will be rebuilt. Okay, sort of like he says, okay, I understand. Okay, so meaning he signs like a waiver. Okay, he doesn't really sign it. I don't think he signs a waiver, but he says, okay, I don't care. I'm in love with this woman. This is, the other reasoning was also with so much intermarriage going on. So finally you have two Jewish people meeting together, convert and divorce, it doesn't matter, but they're Jewish, with a Cohen, and he could finally meet someone and marry them. Okay, so let them be together, especially in today's world where there's so much intermarriage. And then there's a dispute in the conservative movement between some rabbis that say that not only does the Cohen sign a waiver saying, okay, I won't serve in the temple, they also won't have the privilege of being a Cohen in the synagogue, which means getting the first aliyah, right? Okay, Or when sometimes there's a priestly blessing, you know, that the blessing, priests go up and they bless the people. So you won't be able to do that as well. So first of all, a lot of conservative synagogues don't have like the Kohen come up for the first Aliyah, and they don't have the priestly blessing. Do we ever did that, the priestly blessing?
We did it once that I remember in our holidays, and that was.
We've done it.
Oh, okay, so we should do it
But it
back.
was-
Who's our, Peter, you know how to do it?
I don't think so.
You gotta practice, you need to practice, okay?
Well, that's-
Yeah,
We'll get you a workshop on how to do the blessing, yeah.
I was told that I had to kiss the Cohen's foot,
The foot or the hand?
foot.
The foot,
Really?
I heard the hand. The foot is usually you kiss the foot of the parents. That's the tradition.
No.
Is a child born from a Kohen and a convert, would the son be a Kohen?
No, so that's the other thing. You would give up the rights also of the children, okay? So again, in today's world, if a couple would come to me and ask me, what should we do? I would tell them, get married, okay? The only question is, the rabbis that say that you give up all these rights, and there's some rabbis that says, no, you don't give up all these rights. You're still a Cohen, and you can continue being a Cohen, okay? Now, let me correct something that I said. Actually, the offspring, the son will be a Cohen, but he will be a Cohen, it's called like a damaged Cohen. Meaning he won't be able to perform all these rituals.
So it's a half.
But you know, it's
Not even half, yeah.
It does seem to be like
Yeah.
some of these things, particularly if you're talking about the temple, if and when it ever occurred. You're talking far into the future. There will be no records of whether this Cohen married a non-Jew, however many generations,
Yeah.
later. I mean, it seems to be coming.
I agree. This whole thing with the Cohen is become a little bit, outdated, and we don't, I'm not sure anyone could really prove their lineage to the Cohenite families. It's a very interesting question. What will happen when the temple is rebuilt could we really trust that we have a Cohen with all the people saying Kohanim, with all that the Jewish people have gone through history? That's a good question.
Does there exist, perhaps in Israel, a genealogy listing of the old families?
Yeah, but it never goes too far, and it can't go back to the temple time.
Because my family goes back to the early 1800s.
Okay, that's nice, that's impressive. But I've seen, Matt Klein,
Mine go back
you
to.
know Matt Klein, his son Evan had his bar mitzvah here last year, and now he's the president of Men's Club.
Yeah.
If you haven't joined Men's Club yet, join it. This is a message on demand. So Matt showed me his lineage all the way to the 16th century.
Oh, wow.
And then it even goes to Ezra Cohen from the time of the temple, which means he could prove that. That the only problem is there are a few gaps of 100 years here and 100 years there. So from the 16th century on, it's straight. So that is impressive. That is very impressive, and that's unique. But to really relate it to Ezra Cohen, I don't know. Actually, it's being recorded here, so it's like apologies, Matt. I say that, and maybe it could be proved, maybe not. But again, it's almost an impossible. No one really has a lineage all the way to the temples of the Second Temple, and that's really what would count, right? Not to mention that if you read Josephus in the history of the Jews and also in the Talmud, you could see how different families of priesthood killed the other families and took over, in a very vicious bloodbath. They took over the families, and so we don't know anymore who's a real Cohen or not, in my opinion. Yes, Chaya?
A while back, I came to read about genetically work proving that Cohen can be traced to blood test.
Yeah, there are a lot of gene studies now, genetic studies now, that show that Kohanim today have a special blood pool, blood genes. Have you ever done that exam?
No.
It's
One blood test he has had.
Okay, do it and bring it for next class, so we know if you like it. Okay, however, Chaya, that does not count for halacha. Halacha does not rely on blood results, okay?
Well, after,
And that's a good thing that we don't.
I mean, you would also think that some of the things historically, like the Babylonian captivity, who knows what happened during all that stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Everything was changed and mixed, so it would be hard to do. The other prohibition, which is different in the conservative movement, and I'll touch on that in a second, is same-sex marriage. Okay, the Bible is very clear that two men cannot have sex and they cannot get married, which obviously for the same reason. With women, the Bible does not say that. Okay, two women getting married, which is interesting, and even the Talmud has an argument. Okay. Two women that are together, is that a prohibition from the Torah? Okay, or is it just a decree of the rabbis, or is it just something not appropriate? Okay, and then there's like a dispute between the rabbis, and they agreed that it's not a prohibition from the Torah because the Torah doesn't prohibit it, and the only difference in opinions is some rabbis say it's a prohibition of the rabbis, and some says no, it's not even a prohibition of the rabbis, it's just not the proper thing to do. So that's how they conclude the discussion about women that have sexual relationship, but they don't talk about marriage. Okay, that was not accepted in any society back then. So it's obviously there's a prohibition on that. The conservative movement approach is very interesting. There was a lot of debate about that, and there were like different responses that were written in I think it was like in the late 90s, early 2000 century, in the beginning of the 21st century. There were some rabbis that said that it is not permissible to have same-sex relations, marriage. And there's some rabbis that said that it is permissible, but they will not do a chuppah and marriage like a man and a woman do. They will have an alternative ceremony, which they called, how do they call that ceremony? I forgot the name.
Is it a commitment ceremony?
Like a commitment ceremony. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Yeah, that was the big word in those days, or like having a commitment ceremony. And some rabbis go as far as making the commitment ceremony look like exactly like the marriage with the Sheva Brachot and the wedding and all the blessings and breaking the glass, etc. And some took only a few elements from there, and some did a completely new one. And also in the gay community, in the gay Jewish community, some said, yeah, we want to do exactly the same thing like men and women do. And some said, no, we don't want to do exactly the same thing because we don't want to, sort of like copy paste what a man and a woman relationship have, because we have a different relationship. So we actually want to create a different kind of a ceremony. Okay. And we'll talk about that later on, but the biggest issue with a marriage ceremony between a man and a woman is the act of kiddushin, okay, which kiddushin has two meanings. One is sanctifying, but the other also has the meaning of purchase, okay, that the man sort of like purchases, not the woman, but he purchases the rights of a sexual relationship with a woman, okay? So she cannot have sexual relationship with anyone else because he owns her, in that sense. And that concept was not agreeable to gay couples that said, we don't want to do that. We don't want to sort of like buy one would buy the other, and also if it's the same sex, it's not clear who would buy who in that regard, right? So they said we will create like a different ceremony. So that was the approach in the conservative movement. Any questions?
Yeah, Rabbi, what happens, a gay couple, both Jews, adopt a child and bring them up Jewish? Is there any specific?
They need to convert the Jewish child, okay, before their bar mitzvah, meaning put him in the mikveh. And there's no any implication to that. I had a situation where there was a gay couple, and one of them was not Jewish.
Oh.
And I didn't know the child came to do a bar mitzvah, and I did not know who was the mother. Was it the Jewish mother or was it the non-Jewish mother? Because if the child came from the non-Jewish mother, you would have a problem. That child would not be Jewish because they did not, So I kind of like had to ask them, and they said, no, it's the Jewish mother. So that
How did they have the baby?
they had the baby from, I think, a donor.
And they knew which, because sometimes they just mix the sperm, I think, so that they don't know whose it is.
Yeah,
You mean the eggs?
No, she's talking about the sperm. It's the mother that matters.
Well, you
It's the
still
mother.
need sperm.
Two male,
No, it was
two
two
females.
females.
Oh, I didn't know. Well, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Are there rabbis in the conservative movement who will not perform ceremonies with gay couples?
Yeah, so as I said, there is a response in the conservative movement that does not permit that. I explained this, you weren't here, I explained it a few weeks ago. There is a committee that is called.
Watch it.
Paul?
You're okay.
Almost, okay. There's a committee that's called, is this okay, right?
No.
No, that's a dryer, right?
So that's not good?
No, it is, it's okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened to the. What happened? Something happened. Wait. What's going on? I did something to the recording, I'm sorry.
They go everywhere. Thank gosh.
It's annoying. Apologies a second. It's still streaming on YouTube. Okay, so I guess it's still working, okay?
Rabbi?
Yeah, I'm sorry, just having some technical issues here.
Okay.
But I think now we're back on track. So let me just explain this thing, okay? And it's called the CJLS, okay? Committee on Jewish laws and standards.
Is that only in the United States?
That is in the conservative movement. It's only in the conservative movement, okay? And they have 24 I think rabbis. And I think they have 6 lay people. Okay. And they get a question, can a gay couple get married? Can you use a microphone on Shabbat? Can you use musical instruments on Shabbat? Can you eat rice on Passover? They get questions like that all the time. Okay, so they're very busy, right? 'Cause Jews like Larry like to ask questions. Okay. Bombarded with questions with Jews like Larry.
If I didn't ask questions, they wouldn't exist. Right?
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, that's, they all volunteer. I was actually asked to be on that, but then I didn't want
Not a
to.
word.
But you have to travel to New York a few times a year. You gotta spend days and then that's not the big deal. The big deal is you gotta read a lot of stuff and you gotta also write a lot of stuff. But it is interesting. Maybe one day I'll accept. I mean, I was in Israel when I was asked. Maybe
Is
now.
this the rabbinic court? Is this what they refer to the rabbinic court?
No, it's a committee. It's a committee on Jewish laws and
That's
status.
not the court, there's another.
You're talking about the
entity.
Beit Din.
No, it's not a big team.
Not, but the conservative movement also has,
There's
a-
no court.
but there is no rabbinic court?
There is a rabbinic court, but that's more
That's
local.
not it.
That's not it, okay? But the way the conservative movement, which is very interesting, that the conservative movement works in this way, it's like a very centralized way. You could say like, who cares? Like everyone could decide on their own. No, but there's a whole system. And the rabbis, we are committed to go according to the CJLS. I can't rule things that the CJLS has never allowed, okay? If I do that, I am in violation of my standards as a
So when you
conservative
get
rabbi.
smicha, you
When you
are
get smicha-
agreeing to.
When you become a rabbi in the conservative movement, you agree to follow them, and also the synagogues are also signed that they will follow these rules as well. Okay, so different rabbis say, "Oh, I want to write the responsa. I want to." So 2 or 3 rabbis would write the responsa, and usually give them to opposite sides. Okay, and then all the rabbis read them. And the lay people are very important because they give feedback from the communities. They're like, but rabbis, it's very nice you're talking about these things, but it doesn't make sense. Or maybe try to look at it also from the point of view of congregants, okay? So it's like a very interesting dynamics that happen in that committee. And then they come to vote. If your response got 6 votes and over, okay, it's an approved responsa. Okay. Even if the other one got 12 votes, okay, and you only got 6, it's approved. But if you got under 5 and under, it's not approved.
It's certainly very strange, isn't it? Usually it's
Doesn't-
used in majority rule.
Doesn't quite,
It should be majority, there's a.
No, because the vote is on the responsa. The vote is on the actual article you write
Oh, okay.
as a responsa. It's not a vote, okay, should we do marriage or not? It's a vote on like, did you write your responsa in a proper way? And did you address, does it make sense what you wrote? And we all agree with you. And that's where you need a minimum of 6 votes.
So you could have 2 responsive, one,
1 for and 1 against.
and then each of them have to be. voted
both,
on.
both are logically.
Both are logic. When they ask the question about gay people, they also being married, they also ask the question, can gay people be admitted into rabbinical school? Okay, because until 1995, I believe, gay people were not admitted into rabbinical school. And the same question was in 1985. Could women be admitted to rabbinical school? Until 1985, women were not admitted into the rabbinical school in the conservative movement, okay? And in the reform movement, they were not admitted until 1970, I think, okay?
Sally, what's her name?
Right, exactly. Now, in the reform movement, no one sat down and had a response. They had a board meeting, they said, we're gonna let women do it, and that's it. In the conservative movement, it's not so simple, okay? The conservative movement is obligated to halacha, it's obligated to this legal process, of laws and standards, Jewish laws and standards, and the way the rabbis interpret it in the 20th or 21st century. Therefore, you have to go through this process to determine, can you do it halachically? It's not just a moral question, it's not just a sociological question. It's a question, is it permitted when you go over the Jewish sources or not? So one rabbi said, yes, you are allowed to admit women into rabbinical school, and some said no, okay? And different rabbinical schools could adapt the responsa, okay? The one in New York allowed women to be admitted right away. The ones in Israel did not allow women to be admitted into rabbinical school until then, I think the 90s. Okay, so that's how it goes.
What happens with a rabbi becoming a rabbi through HUC and then wants to become conservative? Do they have to go to rabbinical school again?
Yeah, you have to apply to be a member of the rabbinical assembly, and you go through different, procedures. There's a procedure that you go through, and then you could be accepted or not to be part of the rabbinical assembly. But the main thing is you can no longer practice. You could practice in Reform synagogue, but you cannot practice against the conservative movement. So you cannot do intermarriage.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're in a Reform synagogue, you cannot perform intermarriage if you are a member of the rabbinical assembly. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so the last prohibited marriage is intermarriage. Okay, a Jewish man or a Jewish woman may not be married to a non-Jewish man or a non-Jewish woman. Okay, and that goes as well for same-sex marriages as well. The conservative woman has gone to a great length of embracing intermarried families and making them feel welcome in the synagogue. We have a very open policy that is trying to attract families of intermarried people and make both parents feel very welcome and the children feel welcome. And if there's any, and usually, almost always, there are no issues. Like, I would say, I don't know the percentage, but we have a lot of intermarried families in our community, and it's working well. It's like with almost no issues usually. Was there a question?
My older daughter married a Catholic boy. And at the wedding, we had a rabbi and a deacon for the family. And I understand they put together a partnership, and they're doing a lot of those types of weddings.
Okay.
Yeah. But my daughter's husband could care less about religion. Any religion.
Yeah, so it depends always, if it's like the man is Jewish or the woman is Jewish. Okay, it usually helps more when the woman is Jewish, so to raise the children as Jewish.
Yeah, all the three boys they have all had bar mitzvahs.
Yeah, so usually that's easier. I often meet and met Jewish men that have married non-Jewish women, and it's usually a bit harder there, but it could also work. I've also seen that work as well. But conservative rabbis are not allowed to perform a mixed ceremony like that. So I would guess it was a Reform rabbi that did that. There is a lot of pressure from rabbis in the conservative movement, usually younger generation, not always, but to permit intermarriage as well. That rabbis will be allowed to perform intermarriages. And there is a feeling that could really split the conservative movement into two. That would sort of like be the end of the conservative movement, and that will merge with the Reform movement, if the conservative movement says, okay, we will now perform marriages of Jews and non-Jews, and some people are saying, no, it will not create that split. The conservative movement will still be, but it just be more liberal. So, and I mean, I know for sure, because there's a lot of discussions amongst the rabbis about this. There is a big group that is saying they're going to split from the conservative movement if there is intermarriage introduced into the conservative movement. So we'll wait and see. These things are happening as we speak. So it will be resolved within the next probably 10 years. We will know. Well, the things go slow. In the rabbinic world, they don't go, yeah, it's
That's a
not
good
like,
thing.
yeah, it's a good, well, some people say it's fast, very fast.
Yeah.
Why does the rabbi, if he feels strongly about marrying people of two faiths, Jewish and non, why don't they just join a reform movement, the reform synagogue, the reform movement?
Yeah.
That's really how they're practicing.
That's true. It could always happen that way, and it does happen. But sometimes, people want to be where they grew up, with the rabbi that they grew up, or it's important for their parents that the rabbi will somehow be involved, or they want to join a certain synagogue. It's not, people have different choices, and it's complex. It's a very complex issue.
I mean, with all the years of my growing up and so on, I always thought the conservative and the Orthodox were always very close. There were some specific issues which they differed on, but you could feel more or less comfortable praying in any environment. And to me, there was always a distinction between conservative and reform. It was not small. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that but it is changing. I think this is sort of like the nature of the conservative movement. It's always been changing. It started as more like, a conservative. I mean, even if you think about the name, conservative movement, it's like sounds like something conservative, okay? But it's really has become less conservative and more liberal and open over the years, and the influences, I think, from the reform world has influenced the conservative movement. And so we see these changings happening in front of our eyes.
Well, one of the books I got actually when I was bar mitzvah was called Tradition and Change.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's amazing that you got that.
But it's a it's a good description.
Yeah, when we're going to have a session about the streams in Judaism and where do these things come, those slogans, tradition and change, and halachic thinking. And that's a good question. And where is the conservative movement these days? But I think we're going to end now on this note of intermarriage, and next week we will dive more into all the aspects of before the wedding and the actual wedding itself. So if anyone wants to practice it next week and get married, bring your bring whoever it is, and we can practice on you.
And bring your ounce of gold. That's
Yeah.
How about bring up to two, but then we can erase it around, arrange things in a better way.
Oh, yeah. If you do have anything interesting from your marriage, like a ketubah or something like that, bring that next week. It will be interesting to see a ketubah. Okay, Sarika, you're not listening. Yeah.
Why do
you won't do your assignment. I'm saying if you have something interesting to bring next week, like a ketubah or something else from your wedding, a special gift that you got or something like that, bring it. It will be interesting to do that. I'm divorced, so I'm exempt. But it would be interesting. It would be interesting to see. Okay.
bring a copy of the get?
Right. Well, we're going to talk about get. I'll bring a copy of my
I
get.
got one of those.
As yeah. I'll bring you a copy later on. Okay.
This may be a little off topic, but